Well, this is chapter 12 of Understanding Human Communication. And this is on preparing and presenting your first speech. Done. Getting started. First thing you have to do is choose your topic. What should you talk about? That's a very important question. There are a number of factors that come into play. You have to define your purpose. There are three general purposes of a speech. One is to inform, the other is to persuade, and the third is to entertain. As you can tell by how much each of those are paid, they're valued more. It's not necessarily that they're more difficult to do, it may be, but they're valued more. Entertainers make a lot of money. You can get up and be funny and speak and be comedic, make a lot of money. Salespeople, they can make a lot of money as well. If you're going to be a salesperson, I recommend going into real estate or cars. I sold sports art for a lot of years, sold a lot of sports art, didn't make a huge amount of money off of that. So if you can do sales, it's something that makes money. The larger thing you sell, the more your commission is, put it that way. And then the final one is to inform, which is to teach. And we don't tend to value teachers, I don't think, as much as we should. Writing a purpose statement. You have to have take your general purpose and narrow it down to a specific purpose statement at SPS. You want the purpose statement to be result oriented, exactly what it is you want to accomplish with this speech. It should be very specific, very specific. And then finally, it should be realistic. I had a student who once did a persuasive speech, or is planning to do a persuasive speech, in which he was planning to encourage all of his fellow students to buy a Ferrari. I said, well, I think I told him this. If you're going to hand every student a check for $500,000 and then encourage them to spend a bunch of that on a Ferrari, okay. Well, not very realistic. You then have to go forward and analyze the speaking situation. The speaking situation, there are the listeners, of course. In the speaking situation, you can do audience analysis, the demographics of an audience, with age, sex, race, various other factors in an audience. What's the audience there for? We'll talk more about the audience analysis here in a little bit, by the way. What is the audience purpose? What is the audience purpose? Why are they there? I've always wanted to tell a joke at a funeral, but I've never done that. You have to think about the purpose of the audience. The demographics. Now, this is where you get audience analysis, the demographics, culture diversity, gender, age, group membership, number of people. Regardless of the size of the room, the more people that are in the room, the louder you're going to have to speak for a certain amount of time. If you could have 20 people in a fairly large room and you're speaking at a certain level, but then if you have 150 people in that large room, now you're having to project your voice more, and your voice will wear out after a certain amount of that. Unless, of course, it's used to it. So there's that factor. There's other things, educational level, economic status, other things along that line. There are attitudes and beliefs and values that any audience has. The attitude is a predisposition to respond to an idea, person, or thing favorably or unfavorably. We do have certain attitudes that we carry around with us. Beliefs are underlying convictions about the truth of an idea. Is it true or false? Is it real? There are those in this day and age that are saying they don't believe that COVID actually exists, which is, I don't quite understand that, but I've seen people actually make that statement. And so there are underlying beliefs that people have. There's values, deeply rooted beliefs about a concept's inherent worth. Is something good or bad? And of course, we have a lot of traditional American values, patriotism, service, family, hard work, other things along that line, education, traditional American values that we do have in our country. Another thing to think about is the occasion. What is the occasion? Again, I've made this joke about, wanting to make a joke at the funeral. Of course, I don't necessarily want to do that, but you understand my point. What time of day is it? That's an important factor. What's the place? Where are you? What are the audience expectations? I've yet to go into a classroom and pull out my Bible and start preaching. That's not the right place for it. I do sermons on occasion, but I don't go do that in a classroom. I have yet to take my textbook and go to church and start lecturing. Nor do I do either one of those to my wife or my family. It's not a good idea. The place is very important. My first funeral was done at Elmwood Cemetery in Birmingham, Alabama. It was around 1:00. on late May, and it was around 90 degrees, about noon to 1, somewhere in there. It was 90 degrees plus, 90% humidity plus, and it had to be fairly short. Thankfully, the little man whose wife had passed had told me he wanted to go 10 to 15 minutes versus potentially some sermons at funerals do 45 minutes to an hour. When an elderly person passes away, the most people that know them, their friends, things along that line, are because their family may be younger, but a lot of the friends are elderly. And so, out in that setting, having elderly people in 90-degree heat, 90% humidity for an extended period of time could have been a little bit dangerous. So, anyway, going forward now. Gathering information, you can do online research, you can do library research, you can do interviewing, you can do survey research. I strongly recommend that you go to if you go to the library, ask the librarian, can you help me find information about this topic? Because if you do, you're going to get your research done very, very fast. That's what they're there for. They know how to do it. When you're evaluating websites, you have to look at credibility, have to look at objectivity, you have to look at how current it is. And then also, is the site functional? Is it being maintained? Is it something that's going ongoing? Very important thing. Um, I actually, you know, am surprised sometimes by sites people will quote as if it proves something to be true or false. Page 107, page 307. Well, actually, I don't know what it is in the 14th edition. In my book, I'll ignore the page number, just ignore the page number. Going forward, managing communication apprehension. There are two types of communication apprehension. One is facilitative, really just gives you a little extra energy and helps you get the job done. The second is debilitative, where it keeps you from doing the job you might do, or maybe keeps you from doing the speech at all. Very, very few people have debilitative communication apprehension. Some have facilitative. Many have that. There are things that can happen. You can have a previous negative experience. You might have irrational thinking, the fallacy of catastrophic failure. Everything's just going to go bad the minute I stand up. Well, that's not true. The fallacy of perfection. You think, if I'm going to do this, anything I do and everything I do has to be done flawlessly. It has to be done perfectly. It can't be done perfectly. No one does that. The fallacy of approval, thinking that you have to make everybody like you. Oh, that's horrendous. I labored under that delusion for a long time. Get rid of that. You do not have to make everybody like you. You have one bad thing happen, and then you sort of overgeneralize it into making it something worse. Don't do that. And overcoming it, there are some things that you can do. I'm going to give you 3 that I tell every class, but I'm going to give you what the book has as well. Use nervousness to your advantage. Understand the difference between the rational and irrational fears. I'm going to skip one because it's part of my 3. Try to maintain a positive attitude. Just have a positive attitude. Tell yourself, I'm going to do well. Tell yourself positive things before you go up. And of course, it does also, it's going to get to their last one is one of my first ones. We'll come back to that in a second. Also, visualization. They've done some amazing tests about visualization and how visualization can help athletes improve actually as players. But I'm going to give you 3. One is be prepared. If you're prepared, you know you're prepared. And if you're not, you know you're not. Problematic. Secondly, practice. If you practice out loud, it gives you confidence about how the message flows and how it feels. And the final one, and this book has it, by the way. I congratulate this book. I've lectured out of many, 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 many textbooks that dealt with communication apprehension. And the one key, and this is the biggest key to getting rid of public speaking fear, is to maintain a receiver or a listener orientation. If you stop thinking about yourself and worrying about whether someone's going to like you or not like you, and then you just start thinking strictly about how am I going to help this audience in church? How am I going to help my fellow church members, and hopefully growing, all of us becoming better Christians together? In class, how am I going to help these students, my fellow students, or as a teacher, the students that are in my class become better speakers? Or if you're giving a speech, how am I going to help them in some way? When your brain turns outward all of a sudden, and you have that other person orientation, every ounce of public speaking fear goes away. Really, a lot of what it is just pride, worrying about what other people are going to think about you because of your pride. Get rid of the pride. Get rid of the worrying about what other people think about you. Think about your audience. The minute you do that, boom, every ounce of public speaking apprehension drains from your body and you're no longer nervous. Page 311, presenting your speech. You need to choose an effective type of delivery. One of the best is extemporaneous. You have limited notes and you speak from the heart. An impromptu speech, we do these in class. When we're in the classroom, when it's online, it's a little harder to do. But you speak with no preparation. You walk up, someone tells you what to speak, you go up and you speak. Manuscripts are tough. You read word for word from a prepared text. Now that's what I'm asking you to do on the great speech presentation. Take one of the 15 speeches I put up, pick one, practice it out loud, and deliver it back with power and passion and feeling. That's the number one grading factor on that speech. That's a manuscript speech. The last one is a memorized speech, and I really don't recommend any of these. Doing that at any time, just memorizing an entire speech. That's very, very difficult to do. I don't recommend that. Uh, Presenting your speech, you want to practice it out loud. I mentioned that. All right. So guidelines for delivery, visual aspects of what you wear. They've done studies that show that the clothes that you wear when you're giving a persuasive speech affect how persuasive you are. Isn't that interesting? So there's a factor there. Movement. There may be gestures, which is something that we do to help other people follow along. And if you let go of your hands, take them out from behind your bag, take them out of your pocket, let them go, you will do natural gestures. They just happen. You don't really think about them. If you're going to move around, if you're going to walk out from the lecture to one side or to the other side, you make sure you have enough material in your brain that you're not going to have to run back to the lectern immediately to see what comes next. Otherwise you just become a bobbing head where you walk out and you walk back, you walk back. Don't do that. If you're going to move out to one side or the other side, you're not required to, of course, but if you're going to do that, you need to be able to go there, stand there, talk to the students, to your audience there for a little bit without necessarily going back to your notes. Your posture, just stand straight, relax. Don't lock your knees, relax your knees. Stand straight. You move from one foot to another, but not fast, not on a regular basis. That becomes a shifting. You become the swaying speaker. Don't do that. Your facial expressions convey a lot. Your facial expressions convey a lot, and also eye contact. Eye contact is very important. Auditory aspects of delivery, the volume, how high or how low just how loud you speak or how softly you speak, how fast you speak can affect how people can understand you. Depending on your accent, if you have a certain accent, and then you're speaking very quickly, it will diminish people's ability to understand what it was you said. Pitch, how high or low on the musical scale. I've always wanted James Earl Jones' voice. I don't have that. Articulation, just the ability to pronounce things clearly, just articulate carefully different parts of the word. Sometimes we do deletion, where we delete parts of words. In the South, we tend to leave off the G on ing words. I'm fixing, I'm running, I'm going, I'm going to be doing this without the G. So that's a deletion. Sometimes we do a substitution where we add things. Instead of, for instance, we say this or that, we say this or that. Or instead of saying with, we say wit. In addition, we add things to words. We might say athlete instead of athlete. That's not the correct pronunciation, of course. And the other factor is just slurring, just saying things in a way where you're slurring your words together, and it can be unclear, and it can lead to misunderstandings. It can lead to people just having a hard time following what it is you're saying. So you want to be careful about that. And that is the end of chapter 11.